Hello students and hello everyone. This is Teacher Angel and welcome back to our Accounting Online video lessons. For today, our lesson is all about PS10, the events after the reporting period. So what are the events after the reporting period? So the events after the reporting period is defined by PS10 paragraph 3 as those events, whether favorable or unfavorable, that occur between the end of the reporting period and the date on which the financial statements are authorized for issue. So what is this date of end of the reporting period? So usually this is the year end date. For example, if you are preparing your financial statements following the calendar year, so the end of the reporting period must be December 31. However, some companies do not follow the calendar period. They may start at any month of the year. For example, they will start on March 1. So therefore, the end of their reporting period would be on February 28th of the following year. So it depends on the company what is their periods or how do they determine the start and the end of their accounting period. But usually in problems, the end of the reporting period usually is December 31. So assuming that December 31 is the end of the reporting period, you have to look after the events in between December 31 until the date the financial statements are authorized for issue. And those events in between those dates are the events that are covered by PS10. Therefore, the events that happen after the financial statements are authorized for issue are not covered by PS10. So the events after the reporting period may require either adjustment or a disclosure. So I have mentioned earlier that there would be a date of authorization of the financial statement. So this is the date here. FS are authorized for issue. So what is this date? This is the date when management authorizes the financial statements for issue, regardless of whether such authorization for issue is for further approval or for final issuance to others. Because after the authorization for issue, the financial statements can now be presented in the public, or the information in the financial statements will be made public. It could also be that it will necessitate approval of the shareholders. So, pwede na for final issuance na siya or naapay further approval. So, when the financial statements are authorized for issue, this is when the board of directors will review the financial statements and authorize them for issue. In some cases, an entity is required to submit the financial statements to the shareholders for approval after the financial statements have been issued. In such cases, the financial statements are authorized for issue on the date of issue by the board of directors and not on the date when the shareholders approve the financial statements. So going back to the figure, so diba, pwede na the FS after being authorized for issue by the board, pwedeng they are already made public, the FS are already made public, or it will necessitate pa further approval. So what does the standard says that when the FS would still require the approval of the FS are authorized for issue still on the date of issue by the board of directors and not on the date when the shareholders approve the FS. So even if there is further approval, the date of authorization, okay, would still be the date of authorization by the board of directors. So there are two types of events after the reporting period. So as mentioned earlier, so the events after the reporting period may necessitate adjustment or may necessitate disclosure. So basically, there are two types of events. We have the adjusting events after the reporting period and the non-adjusting events after the reporting period. So the adjusting events here are those events that provide evidence of conditions that existed at the end of the reporting period. So what does this mean? So kani nga mga events or mga situations, they are already existing as of the end of the reporting period. So if you can recall, my example is the end of the reporting period if calendar year is being followed, so December 31. So as of December 31, these events already existed. So na-record na siya, so nanatay na include sa FS relating to that event. So these events may necessitate adjustments if there are any happenings after December 31 that might affect those events that have already existed at the end of the reporting period. So again, these events na record na siya or nahitabo na siya at the end of the reporting period. But there would be instances nga na ay mga events that happen after the reporting period nga pwedeng maka-affect or maka-change sa mga na-record na nato at the end of the reporting period. So if these events would affect or would necessitate any adjustments, that's why kinahanglan nato nga i-adjust pod ang na-record na nato sa FS. So therefore, those events that provide evidence of conditions that existed at the end of the reporting period are treated as adjusting events. They will bring about an adjustment in your financial statements. The second type is the non-adjusting event. And the non-adjusting events are those that are indicative of conditions that arose after the reporting period. These events also happen after the end of the reporting period, just like in the adjusting events. However, they will not bring about adjustments. So even if nahitabo ni sila nga mga events, dili na sila makaingon nga maghimo ta og adjustments or dili sila makaingon nga mag-prepare ta og adjusting entries. So kung dili ta maghimo og adjustments, walay adjusting entries, unsa ra may i-prepare? We will only be preparing disclosures to describe or to note what are those events that happen after the reporting period that may somehow have implications in the reporting but would not necessitate changing any of the amounts that were already recorded at the end of the reporting period. So therefore, kaning adjusting events, number 1, would require adjusting entries, and the non-adjusting events will not require adjusting entries even if these events happen, but would only require disclosure. So what are examples of the adjusting events? Katong mga events nga mag-necessitate og adjusting entries. So we have number 1, settlement after the reporting period of a court case that confirms that the entity has a present obligation at the end of the reporting period. So for this type of adjusting events, dapat naanatay na record pag end of the reporting period or as of December 31, we have already recorded a provision for the court case. So we have already debited an expense and credited a liability, and after the end of the reporting period na decision ang korte. So for example, pag December 31 ang atong we record a probable fines or probable penalties whatsoever, kind of probable man nga mapildita sa kaso. So we have recorded 1 million, for example. Then after the end of the reporting period, the decision of the court was released. So niingon ang korte nga 1,500,000 ang dapat bayaran nato. So therefore, we have to make adjustments. We have to bring the correct expense and liability to 1,500,000 and not 1 million. So mato siya nga maghimutaog adjusting entries. Another is the receipt of information after the reporting period indicating that an asset was impaired at the end of the reporting period. So we already have the asset recorded. So di ba dapat man conditions or events already existed at the end of the reporting period. However, at the end of the reporting period, natin mga nahibaw-an nga mga panghitabo that will necessitate adjustment. Unsa man nga klaseng event. For example, your customer declared bankruptcy. This happened after the reporting period. So this may indicate that the carrying amount of a trade receivable at the end of reporting period is impaired. Although the bankruptcy happened after the end of the reporting period, we already have the asset recorded. So we have to make adjustments in order to adjust the carrying amount of the trade receivable that is deemed impaired because of the bankruptcy. Because the customer will have difficulty now of paying their obligations to us. Another is sale of inventories after the reporting period may give evidence to their net realizable value at the end of the reporting period. So the assets are already recorded, the inventory is already recorded, but after the end of the reporting period, the inventories were sold, and so that the selling price of that inventory sold would provide us a clear evidence of how much is the appropriate net realizable value of the asset at the end of the reporting period. So we adjust the recorded amount of inventory as of December 31 to bring it to its appropriate net realizable value, because if you can recall, diba, when we record the inventories at year end, we have to record it at LCNRV, diba? Lower of cost and net realizable value. So if the net realizable value is more evident, or the net NRV is more clear after the end of the reporting period with regards to the amount, so then we have to make appropriate adjustments. Another example is the determination after the reporting period of the cost of asset purchased or the proceeds from assets sold before the end of the reporting period. So since the assets are already recorded as of year end, and there may be evidence of a more accurate valuation, so we have to make the necessary adjustments. Another is the discovery of fraud or errors that indicate that the financial statements are incorrect. So this discovery of fraud and error, diba, would necessitate us to make the necessary corrections to bring the amounts in our FS in their correct amounts. Kaya may mga fraud, may mga errors, so naay mga recorded items there in our financial statements that are incorrect. So we have to adjust in order to bring them to their correct balances. Then we have the non-adjusting events. So as I have mentioned earlier, so the non-adjusting events would not require any adjustments in the amounts that are already recorded in the financial statements in the previous period. So examples of these non-adjusting events include major business combination after the reporting period, announcing a plan to discontinue an operation after the reporting period, major purchase and disposal of asset or expropriation of major asset by government, casualty losses like fire, storm, or earthquake that occurred after the reporting period but before the FS were authorized for issue, major ordinary share transactions and potential ordinary share transactions after the reporting period, announcing or commencing the implementation of a major restructuring, entering into significant commitments or contingent liabilities, for example, by issuing guarantees, declaration of dividends after the reporting period, major commencing major litigation arising solely from events occurring after the reporting period. So this is different with the litigation or the court decision mentioned in the adjusting events, because this one, it is the commencement pa. Okay? It is still the start of the litigation. So, ang litigation or ang kaso, wala pa siya nahitabo. It did not happen pa in the previous period, but karon pang tuiga. So, dili siya maka-affect sa balances in the previous period. Okay? So, maupay pagsugod sa kaso. Katong sa adjusting events, nagsugod na ang kaso and then nanay development after the end of the reporting period. Then number 10, changes in fair values, foreign exchange rates, interest rates, or market prices after the reporting period. But we have to take note that not all of these transactions may require the necessary disclosures, because unsa raman ang dapat nato nga butangan og disclosures. Okay, so the disclosures needed would be date of authorization for issue, the adjusting events. So aside from making the adjustments, we have to prepare disclosures for the adjusting events and material non-adjusting events. So those that are very important to take note for the readers to have a clear picture of what is going on with the company or might have an implication in the amounts that are presented in the financial statement. So for added information.
If you like this video, don't forget to click like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell to be updated with the latest video lessons. Thank you for watching.